All right, let's get into it. Today we're talking about a time of incredible change and conflict, the moment the industrial world had to face the consequences of its own creation. So, take a look at this. This image just screams power, doesn't it? The power of the Industrial Revolution. We're talking towering factories, bustling cities, amazing new inventions. It was definitely an age of progress. But you gotta ask, who was all this progress really for? And what was the actual human cost of it all?
Because, all that new money and technology brought a whole host of new problems. And it created this huge rift, right, between the folks who owned all the businesses and the massive, brand new working class that was making it all happen.
The scale of this change was just mind-boggling. Millions of people were suddenly living in ways that nobody had ever lived before. The old rules of how society worked, they just didn't apply anymore. It forced people to come up with totally new ideas about economics, about government, and about what it even means to be fair.
And what you get is this incredible explosion of new philosophies. It was basically a battle of competing ideas, a battle of the isms, with each one claiming it had the answer to all these new industrial problems.
So, in one corner you had capitalism. The basic idea here is pretty straightforward. Private individuals should own the means of production, the factories, the railroads, you name it. They invest their own money, and the whole point is to make a personal profit. Now, the philosophy that really fueled early capitalism was this idea of laissez-faire. Thinkers like Adam Smith argued that the best thing the government could do was, well, nothing. Just get out of the way. Let business do its thing. The belief was that this total freedom would, in the long run, create the most wealth and make society better for everyone.
Yeah, but that hands-off approach immediately raised a pretty big question. Was a system built for maximum profit actually fair to the millions of workers who were toiling away in pretty awful, often dangerous conditions for really low pay? Critics started popping up, arguing, no way. You had groups like the utilitarians, whose whole deal was judging ideas based on whether they created the greatest good for the greatest number of people. And for them, this system was failing that test, big time.
And all that criticism gave rise to a really powerful counter-argument: socialism. This was a direct answer to capitalism. Socialists looked around and said, wait a minute. To make society truly fair, the most important businesses shouldn't be owned by a few rich people. They should be owned by all of us, by society as a whole, to benefit everybody.
And this right here just lays out the fundamental difference perfectly. Under capitalism, the engine is individual profit, plain and simple. Under socialism, the whole goal is collective well-being, justice for all. These are two completely different blueprints for how to run an economy and a society. But some people wanted to take these ideas even further. A German philosopher named Karl Marx came along and developed a much more radical form of socialism. He basically argued that all of human history was just a story of class struggle, a fight between owners and workers, and he predicted that eventually the workers would have no choice but to rise up, overthrow the entire capitalist system, and take control for themselves. Okay, so we've got all these big world-changing ideas floating around, but how do you get from an idea to actual real-world change? Because people weren't just debating this stuff in coffee shops. They were out in the streets fighting for it. For the workers, it boiled down to a pretty clear game plan. Step one, they organized. They formed unions so they could speak with one powerful collective voice. Step two, they used that power to bargain with their bosses for better pay and safer working conditions. And step three, if bargaining didn't work, they went on strike. This shut it all down. But you have to understand, none of this was easy. Not at all. The factory owners, the governments, they often saw unions as a massive threat. So in both Britain and the United States, it was a long, often violent struggle just to win the basic legal right to organize in the first place.
At the very same time, though, change also started coming from the top down. As the social problems got too big to ignore, reformers began successfully pushing governments to finally step in. The British Parliament passed these landmark laws to limit the insane work hours for women and children. You saw similar pushes for reform in the US, plus major efforts to improve things like public education and prisons.
So when you put it all together, the new ideas, the workers' fight, the government action, it created this lasting legacy of reform. But the really crucial thing to get is that this whole fight for workers' rights was part of a much bigger moment that was completely reshaping society and how we think about human rights in general. This new focus on fairness and human dignity fueled one of the biggest moral crusades of the 19th century, the fight to end slavery. And as you can see from this timeline, it was a long and global struggle. Britain ended the slave trade in 1807, then got rid of slavery completely in 1833. The United States, well, it would take a bloody civil war before it finally abolished slavery in 1865.
And that same reformist spirit wasn't just about labor or abolition. Another huge movement for human rights was picking up steam. The year 1848, you see right here, was a massive turning point, especially in the United States. It's when the women's rights movement really became an organized, powerful force, kicking off a fight for equality that would echo for generations. So if you boil it all down, the entire 19th century was really one giant, messy debate about a single question. Where do you draw the line between complete economic freedom for businesses and the well-being of society? It's the question that defined their time. And it leaves us with a pretty provocative thought, doesn't it? In our own complex global economy, where do we draw that same line today?